But first, 2 years ago, bizarre and devastating side effects from a class of drug used to treat Parkinson's disease made headlines. The medication can trigger compulsive behaviours in some people, turning them into pathological gamblers and sex addicts and destroying lives. Now, more than 100 Australians have joined a class action against 2 pharmaceutical companies. They claim warnings came too late, as Lisa Whitehead reports.
I've lost my self-respect. I have a criminal record. My name is Mad.
Pat GALEA was a busy mother of 3 with a job in the finance industry. But she was also hiding a terrible secret, stealing money and credit cards to feed her poker machine habit.
It just consumed my whole life. You become a liar and cheat. Nobody has any trust in you. And then all the time you're just wondering what's going on. What's changed me? What's happening?
What was happening to Pat GALEA was also happening to others.
Anywhere I could get money. It didn't matter to me. I just up to cash converters and get me money and go straight to the pokies.
This woman wants to remain anonymous. We'll call her Jean. Jean and Pat GALEA took the same medication, Permax, to treat restless leg syndrome. It's a neurological disorder causing odd sensations in the limbs and jerking of the legs, severely disrupting sleep. In the 10 years Jean was on the drug, she says she gambled away everything and ended up living on the street.
As low as walking the street trying to find a house that nobody lived in so I could get in the back and go to sleep.
Jean's marriage and her relationship with her children broke down under the strain. Her former husband says as soon as she stopped taking Permax, she stopped gambling.
Turn off the light, turn on the other light. The person from 10 years ago that I met and married was back.
The medication the 2 women were taking, Permax, is a type of drug called a dopamine agonist. The drug restores the imbalance of the chemical dopamine, which controls the body's movement. It also turns on the reward centres in the brain. Another drug commonly prescribed to treat the symptoms of Parkinson's disease, COBASA, works in the same way.
Can I get a copy of your credit report?
In 2005, financial counsellor Maria Turnbull says alarm bells started ringing.
I started to ask the question, what illnesses do you have? What medications are you on? And it was just a process of learning on the way through what the class of drugs were and then getting the message out there.
Due largely to Maria Turnbull's efforts, 113 litigants have now joined a class action against the 2 drug companies that market Permax and COBASA in Australia. Lawyer Anne SHORTALL from Melbourne firm Arnold, Thomas and Becker says similar lawsuits against other pharmaceutical companies have been filed overseas.
There's been a successful action in Minnesota where one of the clients was awarded $8 million inclusive of punitive damages. There is a class action that's proceeding in Canada and also in the UK, I believe.
Anne SHORTALL says previous court action in the United States has revealed some drug companies may have known about the link between dopamine agonists and impulse behaviour disorders as far back as 1994.
At this stage of the proceedings, we haven't actually had discovery of all the relevant documentation, so we're not quite sure exactly what trials were undertaken, but certainly as a result of the medical journal articles raising this issue, the drug company should have been aware of it and undertaking testing.
Jean and Pat GALEA started taking the drug in the late 90s. It wasn't until 2005 the distributors of Permax warned doctors compulsive self-rewarding behaviour, that is, pathological gambling, and libido increase has been reported very rarely. In 2006, Pfizer Australia issued precautionary statements to doctors with similar warnings about COBASA's potential adverse side effects. It took another 2 years for the warnings to be listed in the consumer information inserted in the drug packaging. And SHORTALL says other drug companies overseas had alerted consumers about the link between dopamine agonists and compulsive behaviours well before then.
A number of countries overseas had issued warnings. Certainly in Holland there had been a warning inserted into the medication. What we're saying is that a warning should have been inserted a lot earlier.
I was quite often sitting in the car and crying my eyes out, but it was impossible to stop it.
730 first reported on the drug's side effects in 2008. Viewing that story was the turning point for Pat GALEA, who had taken both Permax and Cabeza.
I went in to see my specialist for one of my regular appointments, and he asked me how it was going with the gambling, and I told him much the same. He said to me, I think you need to go home, have a look online, have a look at an old 730 report. And the anger, when I watched that program, I was just so angry that 10 years of my life had just been wasted, and my family, just been wasted.
It seems like that a lot of doctors weren't aware of this side effect and unfortunately weren't warning patients when the patients were prescribed the medication. We would be saying that really it was up to the manufacturer and or distributor of the drug companies, to be ensuring that doctors were fully aware of the side effects.
The distributor of Permax, Aspen Pharmacare Australia, declined 730's invitation to comment. Pfizer Australia issued a statement saying it couldn't comment on specific matters subject to legal action, but it would defend itself against any action. It maintained there have been rare reports of impulse control disorders associated with the use of dopamine agonists, including its drug Cabeza.
I think it's underreported. It's not until people have often started to have substantial losses that they've realised there is a problem. There's also a secretiveness that's associated with this particular side effect, where people will often go to great lengths to conceal these behaviours.
And in a paper published this year by the Mayo Clinic in the US, it was reported a staggering 22% of patients with Parkinson's disease taking dopamine agonists developed impulse control disorders. Gambling and hypersexuality were the most common, and the higher the dose, it seemed the higher the risk.
I know the drugs serve a purpose and I know they do some good, but just to have awareness that there's that connection is so important, so that questions can be asked, dosages can be changed, medications can be changed, and the destructive behaviour can stop. I've heard from quite a few people.
Maria TURNBULL is helping to set up a support group to help people like Jean and her family, and they're determined to have their day in court.
Money can't buy back 10 years of life. It can't buy back a relationship. But she wants to have her day to say, it wasn't me.
Lisa Whitehead with that report.